So Zane, maybe even before we get started, I just saw on your arm. What is this? What's this tattoo you got going on here?
Which one?
That's so epic. I don't know why I haven't realized that before. Okay, specifically the characters. What do they mean?
So it's Japanese. It's probably not well translated, as you know. Most people probably, when they're younger, think they put something down and probably not perfect. But generally, it's supposed to be sort of a shortened version of quality is doing things right when nobody's watching.
Hmm.
So one of my favorites, just general quotes out there. I'm a big believer in doesn't matter what you're doing, try to do your best all the
Hmm.
time. You know, act in a way as if you had a public audience.
I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I just saw that you went like this right before we started recording, and I was like, "What is that?" I'm so curious.
Just a couple of steps, some dandelions, some riding, and as well as an elephant. So,
I love it. I love it. I wish I was cool enough to have a tattoo, but I just don't feel like I'm cool enough for it.
you either have to be cool enough or you just need to be, cranky enough. And I think I fall in the cranky skip, like by that line.
Oh, that's great. I love it. I love it. Well, Zane, what did we want to talk about today? I know last time we had a chance to connect. We touched on quite a few topics, anywhere from like marketing to just like running different types of accounting firms. But what's top of mind for you right now as you're thinking for this chat?
There's a few things, but one of the ones that's interesting because I had a conversation this morning is sort of how do we make decisions about what software we're going to use for our practice?
Mm.
We've been a big proponent of QuickBooks. And part of that is just I sort of fell into it when I moved to the US. I didn't really know what software was getting used here. And I was talking to another business who also focuses on the wine space. And she was like, yeah, I'm 100% into Zero. Zero is what we
Oh,
use. I love the technology behind it. This is what I want to use. And part of me was like, this is so interesting. How do we go about deciding not even just, the total accounting practices. You'll have people that will do Zero and QuickBooks.
mm-hmm.
About a year ago now, we've decided like we're not even going to try go down the Zero path anymore. It just doesn't make any sense trying to maintain both.
Yeah,
And I can't really think of anything other than like, 95% of our clients are on QuickBooks. So we're going to go with QuickBooks. It's sort of the
right,
decision.
right.
But I think, software in accounting and obviously top of mind is, AI and ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
and let's automate as much as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody's practice decides on software that they feel is best for them, almost in the point of like, this is the best software. That is basically how we all sort of comprehend it in our brain. And I thought it would be pretty interesting for us to just sort of talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
We have very obviously diverse firms, and I always think of software in what I use internally versus what I use for my clients. And it would be just sort of great to hear your sort of thoughts behind it and what software you've decided to choose and how you went about making those decisions.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, for me personally, I'm a reluctant QuickBooks user. So, like, I even just had a conversation with somebody who is doing some cold outbound with me, and she is selling like a QuickBooks replacement, right? And I told her, I'm like, look, I have zero, like, absolutely no affinity for Intuit. In fact, if anything, over the years, I felt less and less engaged with them because of just the way that they've been handling the price increases, the way that they honestly, I just feel like don't give voice to, or like I actually don't really care much for
You don't like
how
the way they increase their prices so they can have Super Bowl ads?
it drives me crazy. So, and don't get me wrong, like I get it, inflation's driving everything up, but like inflation is maybe at most call it 20% over the last 3 years, where their prices have increased 150%. And it's like, okay, something is not adding up here. And anyway, so I think the thing that really gets me going is whenever a company knows they essentially have a monopoly on the market and then they continue to exploit it. It's just like doesn't seem like good stewardship of that position. And so that's the reason why I'm like, I'm ready to move at any point. The one biggest contention I had with this one person who was talking with me is I'm like, as much as it pains me to admit this, the thing that I think QuickBooks really has going for it is this integration, this like ecosystem of integration, where it's like, doesn't matter what the platform is, more likely than not, if it's a leading platform, it's probably going to have some type of QuickBooks Online integration, because people just know that that's what they have to do if they want to be competing on the big scale, the big scene. They need to have a way to integrate into QuickBooks.
Yeah.
So I feel like you miss out on that when you're not in the QuickBooks Online ecosystem.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't think of any software where they're like, yeah, we were developed for some other platform and now we're on QuickBooks. Like that doesn't,
Right.
That's not a thing, right?
Yes.
It does confuse me a little bit that some people are still developing software for QuickBooks Desktop at the moment,
I don't get
where Intuit doesn't believe in the platform at all, hasn't spent money in probably 10 years on it. And they're just basically cashing in on people that are, I don't know, scared, delusional, can't believe that they need to move on from the product. And, they moved to the subscription platform, which they basically said, we're going to take more money from you if you're not going to move. And yet people are still like hard and fast. Cool. Here's my money for this, antiquated program.
It's true though. It really is true. And I don't know. So I do think like the online subscription model for accounting software is definitely makes sense. Some people will say, well, it costs more money. And I'm like, I'm okay with it costing a little bit more if it saves me time with integrations and automations and that stuff.
Yep.
I think it's also feels, to an extent, it feels like a bet on the future of who's going to like incorporate AI into their platform first. And that's like, I do think Intuit probably has the budget for it. I just think historically that they've done a really poor job actually delivering like the really useful features. It's one of those things that's like, I mean, I work with software developers all the time, right? And so I'm very accustomed to the space. And I keep telling people, I'm like, I think you don't realize with accounting software, the stakes are so low because the competition is so poor. Like you're not, in contrast to like marketing tech, marketing technology, sales technology, like that's had, years more innovation than accounting technology has. And so I feel like even if you come to market with a nominally better product than Intuit, I think you're going to win over a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the big thing with the AI is that, Intuit have been using it for a long time, obviously as little as they possibly can, but it is there already, right? So it's been there for many, many years. So I do feel that they're probably not investing as much money into it right now. But if somebody else came in and started pushing that space, they just go flick the switch. Here we go. Here's our response to that. And I think that's a lot of the time, because they're such a powerhouse where they have a really, really big advantage, is that they can just divert people where they need it. And basically whoever shouts, I mean, I guess that is one of the biggest problems with all technology platforms in the accounting space. They'll make changes for whoever shouts the loudest and says, oh, we need this. So they can change it. A lot of the time I do get changes like, oh, but this is the most requested change. I'm like, it literally added zero value to our life.
Yeah.
So one, I don't know what the other accountants are thinking. Why are we wasting our time on this? And two, you're basically just, it's just a smokescreen.
Yeah. I mean, the example that comes to my mind when you say that is the most recent update where they're like, guys, we're changing the business view and the account. I'm like, I honestly couldn't care less. Like, what has that done for anything here?
I've never even looked at it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, our mutual friend, Mark Coram, who's building Right Tool, him and Victor Garcia.
Yep.
Meanwhile, they're building a tool that literally is what I'll call feature arbitrage. Like the only reason they exist is because Intuit is doing such a poor job responding to client feedback.
Yeah.
And so they come in and they do things like I don't know if you've been in QuickBooks or like how much you are in QuickBooks on a day-to-day basis, but even just the simple act of drilling into a transaction and then clicking on something else and then trying to go back to the original screen doesn't work. It just goes in this infinite loop of, you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
And it just blows my mind. So like, that's one example. Another example is like, I tried using ProConnect. Sorry, this is going to end up being like a big rant. I don't want
It's
it to be
100% becoming a rant, but I'm here for it.
Okay, good. So here I am. Oh my gosh, I've talked with my friends about this too. So here I am doing very low volume tax returns, but using ProConnect because I'm thinking to myself, well, you know what? I'm already in the QuickBooks ecosystem, the Intuit ecosystem. In theory, it's going to be a great integrated experience. Fun fact, it is not an integrated experience. In fact, it's almost like you're dealing with two completely separate companies, right? So like, for example, I wanted to do my company's tax return in ProConnect. I keep my books in QuickBooks. Guess what I'm not allowed to do? Port over my books in QuickBooks into ProConnect to populate my tax return. Why is that? Oh, because I'm an accountant. I'm like, why would you not prioritize letting accountants enjoy the connectivity feature? I'm like, this is blowing my mind. And I talk with like people, I was on the phone for like an hour with support being like, I think this is a bug. And they're like, actually, technically it fits specifications. We clearly called this out as like, we don't want it to connect QuickBooks to ProConnect for accountants. What? I don't know. Super strange. But it speaks to this overall feeling of like, I think Intuit is just so disconnected from the reality of day-to-day accountants. And then you look at something like the QuickBooks Connect event and you're like, well, why do they do such a great job marketing that? Why do they have so many people who come to it? And it's like, because we couldn't care less about QuickBooks. All we care about is the other people, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I'm being honest, like I want to see you in person. And I know that if I go to the QuickBooks event, I'm likely going to be able to see you and I can see some of my other friends. You know what I mean?
I'll definitely be there, like hanging out in the back, pretending I'm not there.
Right. So I'm like, dang it, if only we could get out of the QuickBooks, the Intuit death spiral, but here we are.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things that a lot of my team members have complained about as well is, getting QuickBooks certified every year. They found it as being absolutely useless at this point. It doesn't
100%.
teach you how to use QuickBooks. It doesn't teach you how to be better at QuickBooks.
Nope.
It's literally just hours of marketing and trying to sell you better platforms.
Exactly.
So especially our new starters, they're like, I don't understand why I just did the certification. Yep. And we're like, well, you have to be QuickBooks certified. You have to, get your training done. And they're like, but it's not training. I still don't know how to process an AP transaction when I'm finished there.
Yeah.
So we're having to develop our own training that has to be done before the certification so people actually understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which seems to be pretty crazy, especially because they sell QuickBooks as an easy way to become a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
But they don't actually train you how to use the software. They just tell you what we sell.
That's right.
And if I'm running down that stream, the bigger thing is every time they buy an app and put it under the insured brackets, that application gets worse. We started using, QuickBooks Time way before it was QuickBooks Time. And that program is getting progressively worse every year. And in the last 2 months, we have an open query with them because literally people's names were getting changed. We couldn't export to QuickBooks. Now, it's not a big deal. We track our time there and we bill separately anyway. But it's a place we keep track of, where people's doing on our projects. But we can't even get into QuickBooks. So if we were reliant on that feature to do billing, we could not bill our clients.
Which that is another perfect example. Again, for people listening, QuickBooks Time, in theory, is a part of the integrated ecosystem. But you guys yourselves are having this issue where it can't even integrate in with its own QuickBooks platform. So it becomes essentially useless.
And literally, nobody knows the answer, and they're like, yeah, the development team's working on it.
Right.
And we're like, what does that mean?
I know.
When are we going to get our features back?
I know.
My name literally changed 3 times. I didn't notice that my name changed, but everybody's like, your name's changed. I'm like, oh, it did. But it's just let's get the basics right.
Yeah.
And again, there is a lot of good stuff in QuickBooks, right? It is user-friendly. The audit trail is fantastic. Reporting is pretty good as well, as much as people want to complain about it. There is a lot of positive, but the people at Intuit level, the way at the top guys, definitely have been disconnected from what people actually need and what people actually want.
Yep. It's not, I would argue, I don't think it is any longer product-led growth. I think I don't even know what's driving their growth.
Well, I mean, they're just chasing profits, right? That's all it
Yeah.
is right now. Is it's just revenue. It's just a revenue grab all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do we make more money? So we'll pump the prices up and then say we're doing it to help small businesses, where in fact you're making it so difficult that people are having to look at products that are definitely inferior, but they can't afford the increases that you keep throwing at them. I mean, I won't even talk about like the QuickBooks Pro, whatever that top level that they threw in a couple of years ago, which, what the hell is it? There's nothing extra in there. Like it's just, that's basically telling people have a smaller chart of accounts, we're going to charge you more money, is effectively what they said.
It's just crazy. Yeah. And choosing which features and stuff. I think, honestly, I do believe there's a couple larger accounting firms, or I should say like bookkeeping options, who have taken the route, and I'm starting to think, well, maybe this could make a lot more sense for a volume shop, is just to develop your own internal proprietary solution, because at some point you just kind of wonder, is it really worth it for us to maintain this? Or like to keep, feeding the behemoth. So I don't know. It's definitely tricky. It's on my mind often. So I think it's a good question to ask.